Disney World's Toontown was my first job out of high school, and at the beginning, everything was great. For those of you who do not remember, Toontown is where Mickey and Minnie lived in the park, and had everything you would imagine would be in a real neighborhood, a neighborhood where a cartoon would live in. There were houses, kitchens, bedrooms. Kids could even go in and microwave stuff on the little cartoon microwave. Donald Duck had a houseboat that you could go inside. Goofy had his roller coaster. There was a lot of cool stuff, and although it was for kids, I actually really liked it. I mean, where else in the world can you go and step into a real cartoon village? That was until I started working the overnight shift there. What in the daytime looked cute and silly quickly became more creepy after the sun went down and guests left the park. I worked in custodial, so I was one of the last people to go through the parks at night, and unfortunately, I usually had to go alone. So one night I was doing my rounds and emptying trash cans. I walked straight through Toontown to try to get to Tomorrowland and back to the front of the park. I was finishing a 10-hour day and was definitely ready to get out, so I was walking pretty fast. Normally all of the little houses were dark and the sound effects were turned off. Not tonight though. I went back there and all the lights and effects were still going strong throughout the area. I was dumbfounded. This was a serious departure from protocol, so I had to tell someone about it, and people were going to get into serious trouble. I continued walking and pulled up my radio, but as soon as I did, everything shut off. I then heard shuffling in the distance and thought I saw a tail go into some bushes over near the train station. I figured it was probably just a raccoon or something. The area back there was completely surrounded by national forest, and animals turned up all the time. So I completely forgot about it and went on with the rest of the night. During my shift the next morning though, I heard some very disturbing news about the area. A rat was found gutted and smeared all over Minnie's house's floor. The official story was that it was killed by a possum or two, but the amount of carnage involved seemed suspicious to me. Anyways, it was business as usual, of course. The amount of situations at the park that could happen before there's any change in operation is truly astounding. That was until later in the evening when I saw a batch of policemen and security officers crowded around Main Street strategizing something. For that amount of them to be gathered around one place meant something definitely must have happened. I found one of my leaders standing over on the sidewalk, staring over at the group. I asked her what happened. She said she wasn't sure, but she heard something about a baby going missing. I had never heard about anything like that happening in those parks, so that really freaked me out. By the time I did my sweep later that night, it was about 2 in the morning. I did all my normal tasks, but I was certainly dreading getting into Toontown. I was still kind of shook up from the events from the night before, even though I knew they were honestly pretty much normal. So by the time I got to the area, I was relieved to see that the lights and sound effects were not on. I approached an empty trash can in front of Minnie's house and noticed through the window that the cartoon refrigerator was still open. I figured that one of the crazy interns must have forgotten to shut the door when they closed down the park for the night. So I walked inside the house and went to the kitchen to close it, but when I tried, it didn't close all the way. Fear suddenly surged through my veins. I automatically knew something was wrong. I slowly opened the refrigerator door and witnessed to my horror a baby inside, lifeless and cold. In my panic, I radioed my supervisor and told him what just happened. He told me to get outside the house immediately and that the police were on their way. Then a number of boxes and items knocked down in one of the rooms behind me, and someone ran out of the door. Too terrified to move, I just stood there and watched as a man-like thing skittered past the window. I immediately went outside, desperate to see what it was. It was gone. The police arrived shortly after, and I told them what happened. When no one was paying attention, I saw something on the kid coaster. It looked like a silhouette of Mickey Mouse. I am now writing this 3 weeks after the incident. I was an obvious suspect for killing that baby. My family stopped talking to me. Not even my therapist believes me. But you believe me, right? So, I visited Disney constantly when I was younger. The vibrance of the park, the fresh smell of cookies and bread, and of course, the castle that everyone loves. I loved all the attractions, the snacks, and the characters. Of course, those things were meant to distract you from the deep dark secrets below ground, the halls for the garbage, and the endless amount of sick. I can go on, but there's one vivid fact that lingers with me since I left that hell on earth. No one dies at Disney. I had applied to work in the Orlando park when I finished my bachelor's, and I got lucky out of a few dozen. Sure, it was a janitorial job, but nothing gave me more of a thrill than working at the same park that basically housed my childhood. And I was given decent pay, some benefits, and I was given a shift from noon to midnight, perfect to smell the cookies in the day and enjoy the fireworks at night. I worked with two people that wore suits, and they were some of the greatest people I knew at the park. Jim, who was tall, yet lanky enough to wear the Goofy costume, and Damien, who had the talent to voice Donald perfectly, thus had the job of working the suits. They were amazing to work with, and I loved their roles. Of course, they were a little older than I was, so they knew more of the park than I did. When I was just starting working there, Damien was given the task of showing me around the underground. "Oh yeah, bud, you'll love working here. Of course, you'll be down here most of the time, but you'll get used to it." Damien was the giddy one with lots of energy, so I had to keep up and pay attention simultaneously. He showed me the security room, the suit room, the medical room, and the garbage disposal machine, where we had to wear masks to dispel the smell. At the end of our tour, we passed a door that seemed a bit off. There were many locks on it, and what seemed like padding surrounding the door frame. I asked what the door's purpose was, and Damien stopped. His normal cheerfully boisterous demeanor shattered. He spoke with fear and resentment. "Don't enter that door. Don't ask, don't wonder, don't attempt. Let's keep going." I was kind of scared after that, but I followed his orders. I enjoyed the work I was given despite the area, and tolerated it for a while. The annual fireworks for 4th of July was happening later during that shift, and I helped Damien and Jim into their new suits. The suits were different than the others, since they were made with dry fur and had plastic gloves and eyes. Jim didn't like his suit very much, but had to wear it since it came with a raise, and Damien didn't care. They were just going to stand on a raised platform and wave, so it didn't really matter what suits they wore. I was a bit concerned for them, but they reassured me that it was going to be fine. I wish I convinced them to think otherwise. Later on, the fireworks were lighting up the starry night into a blaze of glory. The kids and parents alike enjoyed the view with their pals Donald and Goofy waving above. I was cleaning the underground during this time. Then something happened. Disney paramedics rushed through carrying two horribly burned suits that were crying and screaming in agony. I rushed behind and went into the medical room after. The new Donald and Goofy suits, which were still being worn by Damien and Jim, were present. Jim had lost both legs, half of his right arm, and had firework shards on his chest, while Damien's suit's beak was torn straight into his jaw, which was also torn off. He was missing both of his arms, and the suit's legs were charred onto his. The fireworks had lost their stand during their takeoff and shot a big bomb near them, launching them into flammable shrubbery. The sight of that made me sick and I nearly passed out. The boss came through and assured me that it would be okay, but I knew they were going to die. I ran through the underground into the bathroom, threw up and cried for my friends. Later on, their names were erased from the work schedule and their work folders were burned. The bosses and coworkers never mentioned their names again, and I heard the door that was padded was opened and shut. I tolerated this job for the rest of the year, cleaning near their workstations occasionally and letting a tear drop. Every time I cleaned around that door, I sometimes hear a knock or a whisper saying, "Buddy," something Damien used to say to me I shuddered every time I would hear it. I went to the boss to collect my last paycheck, and I mentioned Damien's name. Who? Damien. The Donald that died in the summer. Then he said something to me that took all the magic out of the park. Don't be ridiculous. No one dies at Disney. I left with fear in my mind and a gut-wrenching feeling. Whatever was behind that door, it was not special or important enough for them to care. It haunts me to this day what people don't know about the darkness that surrounds the beauty and fun of Disney. About 2 months ago, I got a job for the Disney store in one of their warehouses. So far it's been alright. My team mainly operates the postal deliveries, putting all the stuff you order into boxes before handing them over to the courier. My department has a particular tradition. See, there's a joke that our manager is so incompetent that instead we report to these stuffed toys that we keep in the break room, which comprise of the 3 caballeros, Donald, Jose, and Panchetto. Each of them are about 20 inches tall, and they have their own cardboard desks and everything. We talk to them like they're real people. We get them involved in the annual Christmas party. We also get comment cards and reports from them as well. Donald was the one to point out any infractions I've committed. I've got quite a few from Panchetto that were entirely in Spanish, and one from Jose asking me to play Simba music in the break room as well. I've got written up for playing Disney heavy metal, which is a real thing, by the way. Look it up on YouTube or Spotify if you don't believe me. And most of us know it's not actually the dolls, but we play along in order to mess with each other. Hell, I thought I was being hazed for being the new guy when I reported for my first day at work, but everyone just kept doing it. Anyway, there was an incident a fortnight ago where a senior manager from the parent company came over from the US to do a checkup on the warehouse. It had to do with taxes mainly, but when they got to the break room, they asked us about the 3 caballeros. I was the one to explain the running joke, even showing them all the notices I've gotten from the stuffed toys. That's all really cute and all, he remarked, but I know all the products we sell, and we've never made a Jose or Panchetto doll. Maybe they're knockoffs, I suggested, or someone working here made them. No, it's definitely got our factory stitch work, he explained. We were both confused for a while, before my manager came in and started complaining about the dolls. It seems whoever was behind the prank had gone as far as placing orders for new supplies and signing sick days and pay slips under the toys' names. She even claimed that all the pay slips were signed before she could even do so. Wait, I remarked. You're telling me that the stuffed animals have been paying the employees? Do you know how illegal that is? I haven't been able to figure this out, and I demand to know who's doing this, she complained. And I have no idea how many times I've thrown these damn toys in the trash. With that, she kicked at the dolls' offices and sent Donald flying at the wall. She quickly made demands that the senior manager help her find out who's been stealing from them, since no one respects her. She quickly demanded to have him in her office to start working on how to start an investigation. But before he followed, the senior manager turned to me with worry. Is it just me? He asked, or did you hear Donald screaming? The manager made sure that the break room was locked down completely for an hour. No one could get in or out as the 2 managers started talking. But when the break room was unlocked, the 3 caballeros' office space was back to normal with some dented cardboard. But I wasn't the only one to think that. Whenever the manager came through, they were glaring at her. Their expressions changed. I swear it. Well, before leaving for home, I go to the dolls and say, she doesn't know you're alive. She thinks someone's driving her crazy. Kind of like the ending of Toy Story meets that movie where some girl's husband makes her think she's insane. This morning, the 3 caballeros were nowhere to be seen. The American told us what had happened at the emergency meeting when we came in. He took one look at the expense books, asked around, and found out that the manager was claiming payment for employees that simply didn't exist, and he had her arrested. Well, I say arrested, but actually, she was sanctioned, put into a mental hospital for her own well-being after a nervous breakdown. Everyone assumed that someone found out and was trying to mess with her, but why not just report her to the police? When we broke for lunch, the three caballeros were back at their desks. We all suggested that maybe they were messing about with her like the exorcist and all that. Anyway, I was last to go back on the line, and when I did, on a hunch I asked, "What did you do to her?" "It's simple," Panchetto said as he turned to me. "We talked to her."